Now, on Enough Said, with K-Fans Dan Barrero.
Basically, the ongoing collusion discussion, I think that was a good day for Trump.
And Justin Guard.
So now, is it true that that story was basically made up?
Yeah.
And Comey said,
invented.
Yeah, it was more or less almost entirely untrue.
Enough Said.
My impression was something big is about to happen. I need to remember every single word that is spoken. Look, I've seen the tweet about tapes. Lordy, I hope there are tapes. I remember saying, I agree he's a good guy, as a way of saying I'm not agreeing with what you just asked me to do.
Welcome back to another edition of Enough Said. My name is Dan Barrero, joined as always by Justin Guard, and Lori Fisher is in the control room to get us started yet again today. Hi, Lori.
Hi, guys. Let's get started. Former FBI Director James Comey testifies in front of a Senate Intelligence Committee. He believes he was fired because of his investigation into Russia's role in the 2016 election. Under oath, Comey also accuses President Trump of spreading lies, plain and simple, about him and the FBI. Dan.
I would start with after watching being riveted like the rest of the nation, apparently,
Wall to
drinking
wall.
Parties every place. And I mean, it was almost like sad that it would be a Super Bowl atmosphere because there's a little bit more at stake. But that's what it felt like yesterday, or I should say.
Better overnight
day.
ratings than Game 3 of the NBA Finals.
Well, who's to say?
It was. It's true.
Yeah.
Like by a share or two, it was remarkable.
I'm left with this. Donald Trump picked a fight with the wrong guy. This guy is right out of Central Casting. He's tall, commanding, articulate, precise, self-deprecating just enough. Like I said, I'm not perfect. There are probably some things I could have done better, which was brilliantly handled as well. And he knows Washington. He knows the lay of the land. He even knows how to leak, which is part of the deal. And so by the end of it, I thought he carved out, and he does one other thing that I think is effective. He kind of goes after everybody. There were times yesterday where Hillary Clinton looked bad, or or I should say the former Attorney General as well, on behalf of Hillary Clinton, looked bad. Time where the New York Times looked bad,
really
who he
bad.
leaked to, and obviously times where Trump did. And to me, that's where he was extremely effective. This is the wrong guy to fight with. He was a very good witness.
I'm curious to see where it all goes in terms obstruction of justice. He wouldn't go there. He said that's for somebody else to figure out. And I'm having a hard time finding a lawyer that actually thinks what has happened in this case is obstruction of justice. But I do think it speaks to the climate that Donald Trump has created in the White House right now. One that he, I think, created in a lot of his businesses, right? He's playing right to the stereotype and right to the reputation of kind of being a bully a little bit.
Right.
And he wouldn't be the first president to be a bully. The LBJ stories are
there's
legendary,
plenty in our
and
history,
there are
for sure.
times when the president does need to be a bully, but clearing the room, clearly trying to intimidate a guy and say, you know what, Flynn's a really good dude. I hope that you can kind of let this go, making sure that nobody else hears it, making sure that he knows where he is. You heard people talking the last 24 hours. That was no accident. I mean, Donald Trump is not doing that because he's not doing that accidentally. It's a clear abuse of power, but in terms of obstruction of justice, probably not there. But it's going to be fascinating to see what comes out, speaking of leaks from the private testimony, and now where the investigation goes.
Well, I think you hit on it. I don't know. I mean, we're neither one of us are legal scholars by any means, but who's kidding whom? And this is where I thought Comey was effective. Why are you clearing the room? You're clearing the room for one reason, and that is you want to make a point, and you can say by Trump standards he did it passive-aggressive.
Sure.
But by presidential standards, there's nothing passive-aggressive.
Okay, I want to interrupt you guys. We're going to stay on the Comey story, but a lot of questioning surrounding Comey documenting his conversations with President Trump. He described intense discomfort and why he wrote everything down. Take a listen to another bite.
I was honestly concerned that he might lie about the nature of our meeting, and so I thought it really important to document. That combination of things I'd never experienced before, but it led me to believe I got to write it down, and I got to write it down in a very detailed way.
Well, that was a pretty jarring moment.
First thing that jumped out to me.
You got a high-ranking official now fired, basically saying the president might lie when we have plenty of evidence of his ability to do it. This is going to sound odd, but part of where I think Comey is believable is in what he laid out, and it sounds like, again, with pretty good precision, if you're writing this stuff down as we're going. Now, we haven't seen that stuff, but if you're trying to invent, because basically Trump is going to say he's lying and Comey is saying Trump's lying, but if you're going to lay out, embroider something sweeping on Trump, wouldn't it be more sweeping? Because the stuff he lays out, people can argue about, well, how far was Trump really going? To me, that actually makes what
there could be some wiggle room there.
Out much more believable. It is, I think, important to point out, though, and I don't want us to lose this segment before we get to it, that on one significant issue, basically the ongoing collusion discussion, I think that was a good day for Trump. Because, and that's to me, again, why Comey becomes believable, because he criticized heavily a New York Times story that went down the collusion road. We still don't have that story established. We don't. We got a lot of innuendo. We got a lot of shadows. We got a lot of stuff that's still going to be followed by your guy Mueller. But we still don't have that nailed down.
And that was frustrating as someone who likes to follow the news. And you've got the New York Times and the Washington Post. Everybody's making a big deal about the competitiveness, the almost Lakers-Celtics rivalry that's going on with those two. That really frustrated me when whoever the senator was said, now, is it true that that story was basically made up?
Yeah.
And Comey said,
invented.
Yeah, it was more or less almost entirely untrue. That's annoying because that gives Trump and his people exactly what they want. That gives them the fake news card. That gives them the lie card. And that's annoying. Don't you think?
But doesn't that point to the basically, though, what Trump has handed his enemies is a parallel track, which is the cover-up again. If there's nothing there, why are you covering up? And now we're talking about, as we say, was it an abuse of power, or was it something even more in telling Comey, lay off,
well,
or
let's
I'm
talk
fire
about
you?
that White House reaction. President Trump's personal attorney came out to deny all these accusations, saying President Trump never directed or suggested Comey to drop an investigation into Michael Flynn. Then you have President Trump tweeting, take a look at this, despite so many false statements and lies, total and complete vindication, and wow, Comey is a leaker. Dan.
Well, yeah, he is a leaker.
He is. He admitted it.
I don't think we're going to find out it was an illegal leak. It was, again, he's clever. There's no question.
It was the declassified personal documents that he leaked
And we've
out.
talked in the radio. I mean, I think it's a fair point to say, and he was asked about it, Comey, if this rose to such a high level, you have in the past even offered up your resignation or written a resignation letter. You didn't do that in this case, which leads to okay, you got that in your back pocket just in case a worst-case scenario happens. So how threatened did you feel by this? But to say it's complete vindication is, of course, absolutely absurd. There are several examples. Trump never threatened and said, well, I'm going to fire you if you don't back off. But we have too many, I think, examples, unless you just believe Comey is inventing this, of a guy who's working the angles and making it clear that he wants this thing to end. And again, all that did was serve the causes of those who can't stand him in the White House in saying that he is, whether there was any sort of collusion or not, you're covering up something.
Yes.
And now we got you on that, and you fired a guy who's just basically trying to do his job. You gave, to a certain extent, you gave collusion a new life by firing Comey. You gave Comey new life by vilifying him to the degree you did, which I think is maybe part of the reason he's come out firing to the degree that he has.
Yeah, and you've given a nice window, I think, into how my biggest worry is how he handled this is how he's going to handle everything.
It is how he's handling everything.
With every country, with every ally, with every enemy. Here's what I need, and if you don't do it, well, then I'm done with you, and we're basically just going to blow up the entire relationship. That should be worrisome, I think, if that's because that is bullying and that is harassment, and to try to intimidate and use the power of the office or the power of the country. That's my biggest takeaway. It doesn't appear that he broke the law. I think we can all.
No, I think
we'll find out.
It's close.
He's definitely
and we don't
being
know
investigated
what Mueller's
for
going
it,
to find.
and he definitely is investigated. Yeah. He's being investigated for it. But there should be some troubling things that have come out of this whole thing. And he did fire him because of the Russia thing. He told Lester Holt that. Again,
no matter where, like I said, however you are on Comey, there was another really good Wall Street Journal editorial where they lay out the problem is the guy in the White House who gets in his own way so often, gives people around him no chance to run any interference for him because they never know what's coming from him. And so the idea, again, is, are we running the country? What's going on in the country? That all gets lost. They have no chance to help whatever the...
Coming up next on Enough Said.
The Lynx should have made a blockbuster trade to get her right out of college. That was they didn't want to mortgage the franchise. That was short-sighted.
They mortgaged it.
But once they got lucky with Simone Augustus as the #1 pick. They got lucky with Maya Moore as the #1.
This is a private institution that has made its brand on discretion on who it admits, the same way that most employers have a lot of discretion in who they bring into their organizations. The school is 100% right in what they've done.
Welcome back to Enough Said. 10 incoming Harvard University students need to find a new school. Harvard revoked the students' admission after learning they posted Facebook memes that targeted minority groups, sexual assault, and the Holocaust. These memes were posted in a secret group chat that splintered off from the Harvard's official class of 2021 Facebook page. Several things here. The content is awful, but when will people learn that whatever they post will affect their future? Dan?
Well, we've had variations of this conversation before. And after doing a little bit of reading on this, maybe I'm going to be in a minority of 10% or even less. I'm not that comfortable with what was done here. And the reason is, I guess I need what the new rules are going to be about how far back we go and what is okay, what isn't. For example, as you probably know, on college campuses all over the country, the recommendation by the Obama administration was stop asking prospective students whether they've got
checks or criminal
a felony
stuff.
in their past or misdemeanor, whatever the case may be. And I'm thinking, So in effect, what we're saying, to me, we're sending some kind of mixed message. I'd be curious if that expert would feel the same way about that same school. Was it Harvard or Yale? Harvard, I think.
Harvard.
Saying, no, we're sticking to that. We have rules, and if you have, we're going to make decisions on the basis of your past. Because otherwise, what you're telling me is better to have committed a crime and been convicted of a crime than it is to be part of. So I'm not going to defend the language because I didn't even see all of it. Stupid, racist stuff that having to do with sex. Are we not sending mixed messages a little bit on this?
Perhaps, but some of it was pretty hateful. Some of it was pretty ridiculous, I think. I didn't see all of it either.
So how far back are we going to go?
Well, but if it's on a almost sanctioned, a offshoot of a sanctioned Harvard website, when your students that have been admitted, I can understand it. I hate this story. I hate that this happened, but it's hard for me to argue for the students in this scenario when they know all the rules on the front end, that once you're a Harvard admitted or a Harvard admitted student, these are the expectations we have for you, whether it's socially, whether it's criminally, whatever it is.
Public schools, too, you feel the same way?
Public
schools?
or
private, you give them the same?
Well, private for sure, all the rules are.
A lot of public schools, I read a couple stories, there are a lot of public schools, they just don't delve into this stuff. And I think part of it is we're back to...
Public schools need the tuition.
Well,
if you
that
want to
may
be cynically, public schools
be.
need the people to
but
show up.
But we're back to, we keep telling people, whatever you got to realize what you do. I think we're all frauds on that everything we do is going to be online. It's true, but we're all frauds because kids do stupid things.
That's fair.
And I think we're reaching this point where we've got this sort of puritanical, we're going to come down on you, and we're not realistic when they're 17, 18 years old. I'm not going to stand tall for racist stuff, but some of the stuff had to do with sex. I mean, who are we kidding on some of this stuff?
Enough said. We have to move on. Next topic, the Twins have the #1 draft pick Monday. This is the third time in club history that they get to go first. If you remember, that's how they got Joe Mauer back in 2001. Dan, talk about Mauer's legacy.
He loves Mauer's legacy.
Why don't you start with me? Isn't that interesting? Well, she knows.
Justin,
to lay out all the
she knows how
Justin,
far
Dan,
back
you got
Joe
the
and
first
I
one.
go.
Justin, you start.
You want me to start on this one?
I want Justin to start.
Why don't you set it up?
For a #1 pick,
and then I'll...
For a #1 pick, he's absolutely a success story. For just your general run-of-the-mill #1 pick. Had a very good career.
I sense a Rosenbaum but.
Exactly, and it's in caps here on my list. Right. There's always going to be a feeling for me, and I'm pretty sure for you, that there was just always something that we didn't quite get with Joe. And as great as he was for average, as great as he was for on-base percentage, the MVP year was spectacular. I think he had 27 or 28 home runs that year.
And he missed the first month of the season.
That's right. I forgot about that. I think he had 11 home runs that first year. It shows you how rare that was that we remember all those details from 10 years ago, basically. Now, what's always missing for me with Joe, as good and productive as he was for a stretch, is the best of the best, the Hall of Famers, which he is not. The Hall of Famers add as they go along. The Hall of Famers improve on a weakness. The Hall of Famers say, you know what, I'm not very good at this. I'm going to bring this to my game, whether it's basketball, baseball, football, whatever. And if we want to talk about Adrian Peterson ever adding that element, that's going to be part of his legacy, as successful as he was. And I don't think Joe ever did that as well, as productive as he was for all those years.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I was in a jury, in a courtroom, I'd say, ladies and gentlemen, I rest your case.
I have nothing further.
It was well said. I'll tell you what I want from, or what I've always didn't get from Joe that I wanted. One Miguel Sano 3-run home run this week that should have led to a victory. It ended up didn't because the bullpen imploded.
Yes.
That sort of game-changing sort of, ability.
Put fear into somebody.
And to scare the other team a little bit. has great power beyond the individual home run. And I don't want to make it just about home runs. I'll take the bases loaded double. And it's not like Joe never did that. But we were promised after that one season that he's getting, he's always been tall, but he's getting stronger. His body's maturing, and he's going to be this is the new threat he's going to be. And there was no payoff. We found out that was just about the dome. They had the fans blowing out when he was at the plate, and it would land in that first row past the plexiglass.
That's why we call them the flower pots at Target Field now, the Mauer
exactly
pots.
It. And so I don't. You look at his raw numbers. You say as a catcher, his numbers were unbelievable,
Hall of Fame worthy.
But
final point.
The intimidation factor. Sorry, it wasn't there, and he didn't seem interested in adding that element, which was, I'm going to go after a bad ball. I don't care if that's not the perfect pitch. I'm going to get the pitch that's going to change this game. That's not what Joe Mauer ever wanted to be.
And he represented them in the right way in terms of never getting in trouble and being a good community guy. But the clubhouse leadership part,
we have to move
that part was missing as well. He wasn't galvanizing, wasn't the Torrey Hunter, Kirby Puckett. And maybe that's unfair, but that's what you want.
Unless you consider a vacant stare some form of leadership.
You said it, not me.
As I stare at you guys, let's move on. Here's a fun one. Lynx player Lindsay Whalen is closing in on an amazing milestone. One more win for the team, and she will hold the WNBA record for most career victories. Justin.
She's a winner. That's it. She's a winner, and I don't know.
It's going to be a tough segment because.
What do you mean?
Well, we're going to be
agreeing on everything.
We're going to be trying to outfight ourselves in praising Lindsay Whalen, and by the
You're
end
not
of
going to be able to beat me. It is going to get pretty thick here.
It's going to get rather thick.
Competitor, fearless, unselfish leader, bad dude in an absolutely great way, and she's done it all with literally no ego. Like she would be as comfortable at the White House, where she's been a million times because she's won so many titles, or as comfortable just at some dive bar watching the NBA final. She fits in every scenario. She's done it.
One of us.
And she's one of us. You want to know what I wanted to say? She's Lindsay from Hutchinson, Dan. That's the best part about it. But the Lynx should have made a blockbuster trade to get her right out of college. That was they didn't want to mortgage the franchise. That was short-sighted.
They should have mortgaged it.
But once they got lucky with Simone Augustus as the number one pick. They got lucky with Maya Moore as the number one pick, having the picks in those years. But they made a brilliant trade to get Whalen when they did. And you can argue she has been the most important player on that team the last decade.
Name me, in all seriousness, on when we're talking about talent, intensity, and flair, because she had great flair.
Very true.
Now she's playing a little closer to the vest as she's gotten older, but she's also got great, in her prime. I mean, think about this. At a time where nobody was interested in women's basketball on the college level in this town, Williams Arena got filled largely. It was a good team, but it was largely because we want to go see Lindsay and see what she does. Name me a better combination of all those deals when it comes to athletes in Minnesota.
You can't.
I don't think you can.
Historically, if you talk about best athlete, period, in the history of Minnesota, whether it's one of us or that has played for a Minnesota team, and she's done both now, I don't think she's on that list,
Talent,
right?
flair, and will. That's the best combination that we've ever had. And, it's like a lot of players, athletes, as they get older, she's figuring it out. Okay, there's some things I can't do now. And so how do you do? How do you compensate? Well, you compensate with your savvy. You compensate with maybe deferring a little bit more. And then at times, waking up the echoes of that dominance once again. And so there's nobody that I've watched here.
Coming up next on Enough Said.
He's being forced to defend himself
and explain himself to KESHA.
Is why we're done as a society.
Time for the lightning round. Oklahoma football coach Bob Stoops is retiring after 18 seasons. He's the longest tenured coach in college football. Offensive coordinator Lincoln Riley has the job now. Dan?
Well, the good news is we don't have to worry about, I was immediately thinking,
PJ Fleck.
What if they want to row the boat? Or Richard Pitino.
Oklahoma row the boat.
I guess shocking.
Weird timing.
Strange timing. Great run. Not so much lately. And a lot of, I think, legitimate savagery regarding
Joe Mixon, D.D. Westbrook.
Lack of diligence when it comes to players with very, very questionable behavior in their past.
National title early.
Domestic stuff.
For sure. National title early.
Yeah.
A lot of Big 12 championships, but no title since basically his first or second
year.
We
would take a coach with his one-loss record
good run
here, but that's there, and it's Oklahoma.
Very good run.
Yeah.
Okay, next topic. You guys were talking about this on the radio. Are the Golden State Warriors the best NBA team ever? Justin?
I kind of take I kind of cop out on this one, as you know, from the radio, and that emotionally, it's hard for me to give up Mike. It's hard for me to give up Michael Jordan, given I grew up. Those were my formative years watching Sunday games, weeknight games, all of that. But it's hard to argue against the Golden State Warriors if they finish it off and go 16-0 with Durant playing as well as he is.
Talk to Greg Popovich about that.
What do you mean?
Had him on the ropes in the first game and then lost his best player.
They can't help that. But what happened after that? They went out. LeBron. Nobody plays better than LeBron. For all this stuff, LeBron is still the best player on the planet. We agree on that.
Yeah,
and they're making him basically meaningless.
They're not the best team ever. If they had, especially if they had to play the old rules defensively, Steph Curry wouldn't even know what to do with Michael Jordan or Scottie Pippen guarding him.
Clooney.
Everybody loves
George
get to
Clooney.
He and his
that's
wife Amal.
Yeah, absolutely.
They have given birth to twins, Ella and Alexander. Clooney said that everybody's happy, healthy, and doing fine, and he is sedated and should recover in a few days. Dan.
So do you think?
Funny.
Do you think Clooney wrote that himself, or he had somebody write it for him?
No, that's classic Clooney.
I mean, that's what he wants us to believe.
He's so funny.
Somebody wrote it for him. And in fact, he wrote it 2 weeks minimum before the twins were born. You know it.
You think so?
Oh, God.
Oh, I bet he workshopped
He's not
it.
that smooth.
I bet he workshopped it with Damon. I bet he workshopped it with Pitt.
I'm
I
sure.
bet all the guys from Ocean's 11 and Ocean's 12 and
they got
Ocean's 13.
together and said,
they
what do I
got
need?
together
What's
and said,
pithy
I
comedy?
bet he is that smooth. It's Clooney.
Well, that's what Lori would want to believe.
Yeah.
Sure, I don't want to burst your bubbles.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
A man who, this is not smooth, a man who plays the Tin Man from The Wizard of Oz in New York was still in makeup when he was arrested for a DWI. Take a look. He told police he had just left the Yellow Brick Road Casino. Very memorable mug. His BAC was more than twice the legal limit. Justin?
Yeah, I mean, infamous now, forever, right? I mean, we've seen a lot of variety.
More probably than he should be, to be honest. But
there was a clown a couple of weeks ago that got into it. Clowns are being arrested, it seems like daily.
Clowns are back in trouble now?
No, but like last year.
We survived, we had the clown crisis last year.
But it's wet. The weather is nice now.
Yeah,
the clown is easier
everything.
for clowns all over the country to go out and wreak havoc. So.
Okay, one more thing we want to get to. Talk about awkward moments. Singer KESHA goes to hug Jerry Seinfeld on the red carpet, and he turns her down. Take a look at this.
Because it's hard to just sleep when you're tired, because people are tired most of the time.
I love you so much.
Oh, thanks.
Can I give you a hug?
No, thanks. No, thanks. Yeah, no, thanks.
Seinfeld is defending himself, saying he doesn't hug strangers. He's 63 and doesn't know every pop star. Talking to you, Dan, about if you knew who KESHA was too, and then wondering, have you guys ever had any awkward hugs, maybe at the state fair?
Everybody has awkward hugs, but the very fact that he's being forced to defend himself and explain himself to KESHA is why we're done as a society. Who gives a darn? In all seriousness, it's not that big a deal. Of course, you were offended by it.
No, I wasn't, because you know me, I love Seinfeld. And he is a germaphobe, and part of his new act is when you get to be 63, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do, and you don't have to apologize for it.
I don't think you should have to for 33, to be honest with you. Now, again, we all know entertainers who we say the rules about you're not allowed to look me in the eyes. That stuff is a little bit annoying.
That wasn't what that was, though.
But that's the idea that this has turned into a deal where another polarizing issue, right? Are you for Seinfeld or against Seinfeld? Does he have to explain himself?
I'm almost always
Should he go to jail?
For the record, anytime Seinfeld.